Master franchisers live and die on the success of their franchisee. If you're not laser focused on your franchisee's success, you're probably going to come unstuck. You've got to really understand the numbers of the business that you're in and, down to the real nth degree of detail.
Do you think businesses that do want to franchise would underestimate the financial investment that's required early on?
Yeah, I think so.
Potentially how someone could know whether they are actually ready to franchise their business or not. What would some signs be? Today we're going to dig into whether you are actually ready to franchise or not, and who better to ask than the CEO of one of the largest, if not the largest franchises in New Zealand, Anytime Fitness. Cam Ward, good to see you, mate.
G'day, mate. How are you?
Yeah, really well.
Good.
Is that correct? The largest franchise? How do we measure that?
We'd be the largest gym franchise. I'm not sure if we'd be the largest across all the other sectors, but as far as gyms go, we are by geographic footprint, yeah.
And at time of recording, I think you've got 62 sites across New Zealand.
Yeah, 62 open and number in kind of various stages of build at the moment. So there'll be another few opening in the next couple of months.
Nice. So you've been smashing it through the pandemic, the recession, and there's no slowing down. You want to have over 100 sites in time.
That's right. Yeah, we do. Yeah, no, we're just getting started.
Yeah, I love it, just getting started. And 38 owners of those 62. So you've got multi-sites.
Yeah, multi-site owners in there as well, yeah.
Now, obviously, it probably sounds like I'm telling your story for you, but for those who may not have seen, we've done a podcast over an hour under Keep the Change where I ask Cam a lot of questions for people who may be thinking about getting into franchising or understanding franchising better. But from the business side of things, often what we see is people think that franchising may be their next step or their solution. So I thought it'd be worth finding out from you the realities of that and giving people maybe a bit of a reality check or some ways to understand whether they're actually ready for that or what they might be completely unaware of.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
All right. So let's start with potentially how someone could know whether they are actually ready to franchise their business or not. What would some signs be?
Yeah, I think if you are ready to do it, what often happens is, someone will have a single site that'll be going really, really well. Demand seems to be outstripping supply. And so, one of the avenues for growth can be to look at, probably either expanding the number of privately held sites or start looking at what franchising that model might look like and what might be entailed. In using franchising as the vehicle for future expansion, I suppose. So generally that would be the first trigger. Is okay, have I got capacity here? But it doesn't. There's also got to be, have I got something? Is there something here? Is it
repeatable maybe? Or?
Is it repeatable? Is it scalable? Certainly, getting a fair bit of advice before you came to a conclusion is a pretty good idea. And just making sure that you understand the market that you're operating in, and is there space and opportunity within that market to expand your site geographically, and particularly in New Zealand, where from a population base, we've got deep clusters of population in cities, but then really the population is spread out pretty provincially and rurally. So it's understanding what that sort of population or catchment looks like in order to sustain a business helps you work back from like how many businesses these is feasible, and then based on the economics of a franchise, is it even worth it? Will it sustain a master franchise operation? And you kind of getting to that end before you go too far is probably a good idea.
Well, we'll get into shortly what the master franchise sort of does or franchisor, but for those who don't understand, so if I was going to franchise Next Advisory, for instance, I guess my dream would be that I would be selling a franchise to somebody and they're going to do it in, let's say, Queenstown, and then they'll pay me to have the rights to use the Next Advisory brand, and then my responsibility would be to feed them work and leads and help do branding across the country. Yep. And then give them the processes and the infrastructure to run on and do it the Next Advisory way. And then they pay me probably a percentage of revenue each year as well.
Yeah, and you'd also, as the master franchisor, you're also responsible to protect the brand and also innovate the brand with the market. So, if it's accounting, as technology changes and various tools come into place, ensuring that your franchisees have the benefit of that, and you're reinvesting those franchise fees back into the system to ensure that, hey, the business is protected both now and for the foreseeable and unforeseeable.
Because I almost get the sense that some business owners go, right, I've sort of met supply with demand, yet we could keep going and getting more clients. It's getting a little bit monotonous or frustrating or boring, or I can't see scale there. And actually what they're doing is they're looking at it like a rental property, which is basically, oh, well, if I just set up another one, like someone's going to give me some money, which would be great, and each month they'll give me some more money and I'll have some passive income coming through, and I don't need to do anything for it.
Yeah, that's definitely not that. That'd be the fastest way to fail. And I think that's probably one of the big misconceptions is, you just put my name on it, you pay me a chunk of cash and you get on and do it. But that would undo the whole concept of it pretty quickly, and probably end up with unhappy franchisees and probably a pretty unhappy master franchisor as well. So what you want to do is really make sure that all those things are in place, and understand, one of the key things is understand what a master franchisor does and what it doesn't do, and then also understand, have you got the capacity and the resources to ensure you do a very, very good job of that.
Because ultimately, the success of the master franchisor is based on the success of the franchisee. So if I'm not supported well in the Queenstown running of Next Advisory, I'm still going to point the finger at Luke in Auckland and go, mate, I gave you that money. I'm paying you each month. What is going on?
What are you up to? Yeah. And you're exactly right. Like master franchises live and die on the success of their franchisees. Like that's just the two are just inextricably sort of linked together. You can't have one without the other. And so if you're not laser focused on your franchisee's success, you're probably going to come unstuck. So, for any time, for instance, that's the way it works. It's a percentage of royalty. The better our franchisees do, the better we do, and the more we're able to reinvest into their companies. So.
Big goals start with planning, and that's why we run 90-day business planning sessions one-on-one with aspirational business owners. Together, we help you set clear targets and start taking action straight away, and action on the things that matter, like pricing, margin, cash flow, ideal customers, and making sure that you're moving the needle to get closer to where you want to be. We've got tons of strong Google reviews in this space, so go and check those out. This could be perfect for you if you're after no fluff business planning and are keen on accountability. If you want to apply to book your 90-day plan, go to nextadvisory.nz and let's see if this is a good fit for you. I'd imagine people come to you and say, hey, I'm looking to franchise, and people are wanting to pick your brain. What are they, okay, this can't be done, I can't help you. What is typically, and I'm not saying that this is a service that you offer, but I'm sure people pick your brain over a barbecue. But what are they typically missing that's not actually going to allow it to be franchisable, if that's a word? Yeah,
I think you've got to really understand the numbers of the business that you're in, and down to the real nth degree of detail. Because once you say, well, okay, I've got one successful business, or maybe two or three, or whatever it happens to be. In order to scale that and duplicate that, they've all got to be, on average, kind of returning enough profitability to not only generate franchise fees to go back to the master, but also ensure that that's not prohibitive to your franchisee's success. So there's got to be, a real deep understanding of your commercial and financial element of your business, and understand how that then moves once you start scaling that, and how that has to be replicated along the way. So that would be the first thing. And I think one of the things that I do here is that, really having one good successful site's probably not enough. I think if you're serious about franchising, you probably need to have, a number of sites, and ideally, in different parts of the country, so that you could really prove the model out in such a way that you can be pretty sure that when you go to another part of the country, you can expect similar or the same results. Even New Zealand, small country, every end of the country operates differently. The markets are different, costs are different, availability of staff is different. So you need to factor for all those variables in it. So one shit hot, rock star of a site doesn't necessarily equate to a really strong franchise.
Got you. So because you're not really collecting enough data to know, okay, is this just rocking and rolling in this little micro economy, or are you actually really good at this and you've got it going in two very different?
Yeah. I think when you bring franchisees into the equation, you've got a degree of responsibility for their, success, or, and so, and that's not something you should be taking on lightly at all. You've got to be really invested in your franchisees doing well. These are people, these can be mum and dads, they can be young people, and they've got, at times, they've got a lot on the line. It could be their retirement, it could be whatever. So you can't look at it like it's easy or whatever. You've got to really look at it seriously and say, once I bring in stakeholders like that, can I ensure that, failing things I can't control, I can do everything I can to make sure it's successful for them.
And I suppose as well, you have to be very good with people, because if you get the wrong people on board, and even if they're then the wrong people for your customers, they're then representing your brand, they're still going to go Google and go, I used blah, 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 they sucked, don't use them, and you're going to go, oh, sheesh.
That's right, because most people don't care. They see Anytime Fitness. They don't see that there's an independent operator behind it. They see the brand. And so, people are everything, getting it right, getting those relationships right, and, treating people, getting the right people on board to begin with, and then making sure that, you treat people with respect, and you're invested in their success and communicate well, and all the rest of it can go a long way.
Yeah, and I suppose you've got to then be able to explain why the franchise versus having a crack yourself, right? Because I'd imagine that would be the Kiwi approach would be, well, I'm just going to start my own accounting practice or whatever.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the other key questions you've got to ask yourself when you're wanting to franchise is, am I ready to become a franchisor? Because it's a very different seat to sit in. You could be a fantastic gym operator, but it doesn't necessarily make you a strong franchisor. Because when you're sitting in that space, you are the brand guardian, you're the standard guardian, it's up to you to make sure that standards are upheld throughout the country. And so, there's uncomfortable conversations, there's audits, and there's compliance, and there's all these things that, the words that no one likes, but they are part and parcel of franchising. But those are really important because they're designed to protect those brand standards, and that's to protect the investment of everyone involved. And that's, stakeholders around the world, not only in New Zealand, is that's what you've bought into, and that's what you've got to maintain.
I suppose selling the service or good is very different to selling a franchise.
Absolutely, yeah, it's a total different game. Yeah. Franchising, so you're not selling gym memberships, you're selling business opportunities. So it's a it's a very different skill set and a very different way of looking at the business. So great if you can come from that space and understand it. Like, it does put you in a strong position, but you still need to understand all the economic factors that go in selling a business. Let alone just selling a couple of gym memberships.
Have you seen anyone that has gone and franchised, and you've spotted things and thought, oh, they could probably franchise that, and maybe they can't see that opportunity?
Yeah, there has been a couple. Yeah, we sort of have a we do look to acquire other brands and that from time to time, and various other groups. So yeah, we do look at it, and we do think, okay, there's a small independently owned group, and they're doing a really, really good job, and they might have 3, 4, 5 strong sites around the country that are in areas that we'd like to be in, that we haven't been able to be in for whatever reason. And we'll certainly look at those sort of things and look to bring them into our structure to fast track the franchising element to it. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so that's definitely an option. Yeah.
I like that piece you say around being the brand guardian, because I was thinking, even if you get to, the first franchise, I'd imagine, would probably be the hardest, because then you've got to set up all the infrastructure of how that actually works.
Yeah.
And then as you start growing, but even if you get to 8 regions, if one of them is, the negative Nelly and nobody's getting on with them, then you probably got 7 franchise owners going, hey, why are we putting up with this? What are you going to do about it? It's not for me to...
Yep, totally. Yeah. If you're not upholding those standards, your franchisees will get annoyed with you, because, that's you are, you have a bar that you've got to keep raised for everyone. And when you get to a certain level, it's inevitable you're going to have some challenges along the way with your performance or whatever. And you've got to be able to manage that and have some tough conversations. And really, it's about finding a way to get things back on track and get people back to where they need to be.
So what are some of the things that the master franchisor sets up or organises for a new franchise owner that people are probably oblivious to sorting out?
Yeah.
Their long list.
Yeah, everything. Yeah. So, once you, And look, all franchises are different, and all will be providing different levels of what, some of the stuff, and some will be doing more, and some will be doing less. But as for what we do, you are providing, leasing and site selection support. You're providing significant marketing support and resources. You are providing sales support, how to sell. You're providing all the design guidelines and supplier beneficial pricing and things like that you just can't access when you Joe blogs off the street for top tier equipment. So you're getting the value and all that, and then once you're up and running, you're getting this ongoing kind of support and innovation and brand kind of marketing to keep your business successful for the term of your involvement with it. So yeah, there's so much we involve, and a lot of it sometimes it's just like, we have an ear on the other end of the phone when you're having a shocker and you can't figure something out. It's you've got a support network of people who genuinely give a shit about whether your business does well or not, and I think that's hugely valuable.
Because I suppose you get questions from sales conversion to okay, what do these numbers mean, to how do we deal with the staffing issue?
Yep. Yeah. So, and hey, we've got we'll have a difficult customer who's making, complaints about staff. We've got everything under the sun. So there's no sacred cows and nothing's off the table. If you're having a problem, we're going to help you resolve it. So, where we can, we're not going to offer, legal advice if it's outside the scope of what we're going to do, but, we'll certainly be able to provide, guidance and a runway to talk to the right person to get the result you need.
Out of interest, so say I want to start a gym and I sort of think, my mate's a landlord and he's got the site, and I come to you guys and go, righto, like I want to get this going and I want to do it there. Do you go, well, actually that site's not actually going to work. Here's what we research, and great that's you, mate, and you think that's the right site, but actually no, that's going to set you up to fail? Yeah,
there's a whole approval process for site selection that we go through. It's got to hit different demographic markers to make it with the best chance of success. So it's definitely not just, hey, I've got a shed out the back, let's go for it. And there's parts of the country that are just like, look, it just doesn't have the population base to support it. We know what the demographics got to look like. We know how many people, we know all that data, and that though it's not, it doesn't make anything, 100% sure, it certainly de-risks it significantly. We know that our model will spit out, if somebody bought me a site, I can put it into our model and pull out a range of kind of a grade basically on whether or not that's going to, be an A, B, C, D, or E grade site. And we would want A sites all day long, but then Bs can look good if we've got some good market intelligence about what's happening in the future as well. So.
Yeah, and I guess that's with so much data over the years that becomes easier to do. Whereas if you're starting out in franchising, you're sort of starting from the scratch. I'll be collecting the data and going, we won't make that mistake again.
Yeah. And look, it's not to say we haven't made them either. And I think all franchisers have probably put, a site that looked like a really solid bet 12 years ago. You may not look at it again today, but that's the way that, you can't control that. Yeah. So everything we do now is to just really try and kind of, buffer any of that stuff anyway.
Do you think businesses that do want to franchise would underestimate the financial investment that's required early on?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's one of the other things you'd have to really ask yourself is, do you have the financial, do you have the pockets or the financial desire and capacity to resource a master franchise appropriately? Because arguably when it comes to systems and structure and, processes and technology, whether you've got 100 sites or 3, a lot of your cost is going to be much the same. You're going to be, whereas you've only got a few sites, it's going to be pretty expensive to sustain, the right level of coaching and the right level of marketing support and all the rest of it when you've got a small catchment that you're trying to generate franchise fees from. So you have to be prepared for the long game. You've got to be prepared to invest heavily up front to make that return further down the track once you grow.
What sort of staffing levels do you guys have in New Zealand?
Yeah, we keep it pretty lean. We are 8 in the head office, and that's fluctuated over the years from sort of 6 to 12. It currently sits at 8, and that's pretty good for where we are at the moment. And that's across sort of marketing, operations, finance, admin, franchise development and then sort of, leadership. I suppose a couple of us in that space as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose, like you say, once you start adding on, more sites, then you've already built the processes, so the staffing becomes more efficient.
That's early on. Yeah.
You're going to be.
Yeah.
I think people would forget that they're going to need to invest money into people.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
And because we were talking about the other one, like franchising being relatively misunderstood or whatever it happens to be, it's got a very, very small base of experienced franchise professionals in New Zealand. So you are investing a lot of the time in great people, but there's a lot of training to get them up to speed in order to deliver. Because franchising, by its very nature, there's a lot of things within legal risks and stuff like that come along with it. And so there's a deep understanding of this world that needs to be in place. So real skill shortage in the area. And so you are paying, great people when you're paying them well to do a great job. Yeah.
And you touch on training. I'd imagine that probably becomes a big part of being the master franchisor is actually training them to be, to do it your way, whatever that franchise is, and also be good at what they do.
Yeah, totally. So that is a key part of it, and that costs money too. So that comes down to that, that sort of financial investment. But it's something that's so critical because, if you're only touching base with your franchisees once a year and you're having a beer or whatever, things are getting wobbly. So there's regular touch points in place to say, well, okay, this is the training. We have ours. We have a quarterly one called, bi-yearly now it is, called Vitals, where it's very much what it says. It's like, this is the vital stuff that you need to know, and it changes every time we deliver it because the business is changing and the needs change. But it does anchor back into the most important parts of it, which is how do we look after our members? And that evolves, but the core tenets of it stay the same.
Outside of the fitness space, what are the other biggest franchises in New Zealand?
I think you probably find in the fast food area would be pretty big. You probably find McDonald's as a franchise. I don't know if it is the largest. I'm almost just assuming it is, so I'll have to edit that out. I don't know. Yeah, so you'd find that's pretty big. Construction's got a lot of franchises in it, so your signature homes and your landmarks and things like that are in there. But then there's cleaning. There's lots of small cleaning franchises. There's your watchmaker, your Minuteman, your shoot. All these sorts of franchises. When you walk into a mall and you have a good look around, you probably find that a fair few of them are actually franchise cafes, coffee club, all those sort of things. They've got a lot of sites around the country. So,
because people wouldn't appreciate how big franchising actually is as a percentage of the market, right? And you had some stats on the Keep the Change podcast, but do you want to take us through those? Yeah,
it's a significant industry. So it's just under 12% or 11.8%. It contributes to GDP. Based on, I think, 2025. So that's, that's a fairly significant chunk. It's bigger than a lot of industries on their own. So franchising, it's pretty solid. I think there's, at last count, there's about 590 brands that are franchising within New Zealand at the moment. And around about 70% of those are homegrown brands. So there's a lot of Kiwi-owned brands doing it. Started here and small and large franchises that are doing really, really well. In various sectors. So, it's significant. Employs, I think, probably between 180 and 200,000 odd people. So it's a fairly significant employer. It crosses just about every business you can think of or any industry has probably got a franchise or two operating within it. Yes, it's not insignificant.
Yeah, I think a lot of people wouldn't. I was even thinking, I wonder, like Paper Plus, for instance. I don't know if they are.
Look, I think they work. Well, they certainly work. Because I think even like New Zealand Post, you could you could have a franchise there. I think, your Jim's Mowing, Jim, the whole Jim's group, which is an enormous franchise system. And
I think I saw they're doing like mobile dog washing and stuff now.
Jim will do whatever you want. They've done extremely well as
Australian.
Yeah. Still, I think Jim himself still heads it up, and he's the guy. So pretty cool story actually. So yeah,
I think I saw Jim doing some content on LinkedIn.
You may have done, I think he's all of a sudden come to life. He's discovered the camera.
Someone's working out with the personal brand. I reckon for Jim, but that'd probably be one of the big brands that everyone's very familiar with, right?
Yeah, that's right. And that's your local guy, mowing the lawns or washing the house or whatever, and you can buy into something like that at a relatively low cost and create a nice business and lifestyle for yourself and work for yourself and have the freedom that comes with that.
But I suppose for you guys, like you'd probably sit above that low barrier to entry and be in that mid higher, right? And so that means it's probably even harder to find potential franchise owners because they've got to actually have the financial capability to get involved.
That's right.
In the process.
Yeah. So you can have so there's one thing to have the desire, but you've really got to have the ability to get the capital in place to fund the
treadmill for me.
Yeah, and I mean, like everything, it's not cheap. We sit in the mid high end of the market, so all of our equipment is it's the top. Everything we look at is top range. It's the best gear. It's the best technology. So we're definitely not looking at for any time at least cutting corners in that space. So we think that's a better model. We think it's got more life in it, and we're not interested in cutting costs or anything like that. So we need people who can come along, see that value, and be able to invest at the level that's required. But the other side of that is it probably provides a far more significant return on that capital than some others. Yeah.
Sometimes when I speak to people who are looking to franchise, one of the questions I ask them is why is it that you've thought franchising is the answer?
Yeah.
And one thing that I often see is then a pause and then an admission of, well, I want to make some more money. Or maybe I'm I feel like I've sort of tapped out my own time. But often if we dig into it, it's actually things are being priced incorrectly, which then isn't leading to the financial outcome that the business owner would like.
That's right. And I think this goes to my earlier point, like understanding those numbers is probably the first most critical aspect of if you are thinking about franchising. Can you have you got a model to franchise? And at the end of the day, the answer to that question probably takes out a vast portion of people who probably want to do it, because that model's got to be able to be franchised. So it's all good and well to say, okay, I'm making X amount of money, but can that model sustain, scale and, the need to reinvest X amount every X amount of years and all the rest of it. So understanding that and answering that question honestly is probably your first hurdle to get over.
Yeah, because something that I then see is that when I say to them, well, you want me to buy a franchise in your business, but your numbers are going to show me that you don't really have a large profit. Why am I going to buy this to repeat it when you're kind of frustrated by it not giving you what you wanted it to give you?
Exactly. So you've got to have a model to sell, and that model's got to have a market, at least a market acceptable return on investment. Once you factor in for things like franchise fees and that, otherwise you really haven't got a model to franchise.
Yeah.
And so I think to your point, it's really important when you are looking at it to be, if you do go down that road, you've got to be fully transparent and really honest with people who are coming on board as franchisees that this is the reality of it, and this is what you can expect. This is the average, and with hard work you can come out here. If you drop the ball, it's going to be here. But this is where you should be able to sit relatively comfortable and take that to your lender and be relatively confident that's the outcome you're going to get.
Any final advice for those out there who think they might want to franchise or that are teetering on maybe that's their solution?
Yeah, I think, look, it's a broken record, but validate your business model first and foremost, and then probably ask yourself, am I ready to be a master franchisor? Have I got this? And that's a tough question. That's a bit of a look in the mirror one. But have I got the skill set and the inclination to take on those roles that a master franchisor needs to take on? Or am I better suited just opening up a whole lot of these things for myself and having an independent group that just cranks along really, really well too? So there's no right or wrong to it, but the two are different. And
that's probably my takeaway is, have you got a model to sell? Having a model to sell is very different to having a business that's profitable.
Totally. Yeah. Have you got the systems in place and the processes in place, or are you prepared to invest in that in order to have something that is actually franchisable? Because as you said right at the beginning, chucking a name on a door and hoping for the best is probably, probably not going to go too well.
Well, mate, thank you for your time. It's not every day that we get to sit down and shoot the realities of franchising with the largest franchise in New Zealand, or one of, especially in the gym space.
The gym space, yeah.
Anyway, so thank you for that, and I'm sure there'll be members that are watching.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, look
across the country.
Yeah, no, hopefully it's helpful. So Always happy to have a yak. Yeah.
Brilliant. Cheers, mate.